My name is Dr. Saeed Mohammad Jawad, and I would like to thank the ST uh, College, ST-1 College, and the organizers to give me this opportunity to present my lecture in today's international conference. Here, I would like to share my screen right now. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So here my topic is about the Persian language and the British Raj in India. As we Indians celebrated Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and Azadi Ka Amrit Kal, it is high time to take an initiative to celebrate and commemorate these 76 years of progressive and independence India. Along with its Persian root, it is high time to glorify Persian as it prestigious being a language of illicit culture, language, literature, bureaucratic interactions, and learning in India. So the first introduction is that, as we know, that the Persian language was the court language for about 800 years during the Delhi Sultanate and Mughal period in India. Ziauddin Barni, the author of Tarikh-e-Feroz Shahi, he tells us that Muhammad Sultan, the son of Ghiyasuddin Balban, he reigned between 1266 to 1287, patronized it in his court, as he said that his Muhammad Sultan's attendant used to read the Shahnama, the Diwan-e-Sanai, the Diwan-e-Khaqani, and the Khams of Sheikh Nizami. Learned men, these are the most famous books in Persian. Learned men discussed the merits of these poets in his presence. Amir Khosrow and Amir Hassan were servants at his court. The end of the most prestigious of this language starts in the late 18th century as the British gain ascendancy and slowly supplant the established court patronage system of the India. This downfall in Persian may be relevant to the fact that Persian no longer used in Indian power circle, that is administration, judiciary, education, media, and so on. Uh, so far as the research questions are, how the first is that how was the initial introduction of Persian literature in India, how the Mughals became the ambassadors of Persian civilization in India, and how the decline of this literature in Indian subcontinent, to what extent the cultural influence of Persian during British India, and who were the late Persian legends of Indian soul. My research objectives are to explore the cause of this decline of the language, to study about the cultural influence of the Persia on India, to analyze the role of British in unpopularizing and patronizing of the Persian culture, to describe the growth and spread of the English in comparison to Persian language, to mention the other Indian legend and literary figures of Persian in India. The literature review for an overview of the transformation of Persian literary culture under British colonial dominance. We can refer to the S.R. Farooqi. His book name is Unprivileged Power, The Strange Case of Persian and Urdu in 19th Century India, published in 1998. Another one is P.T. Nair, Decline of Persian Studies in Calcutta, Indo-Irenica in 1999, and Dia Rahman, Decline of Persian in British India, South Asia in 1999. These books are also authentic sources of Indo-Persian contexts. The religious exchange, especially the Sufi exchange, are the main part of these books. The author relatively depends upon rare sources of Persian literature for depicting the Indo-Persian thoughts. Thus, the medieval period was the major time for promoting of Persian language and literature in India, but the modern era is the downfall of 800 years of this elite Persianate. The role of so many Indian writers and poets who know Persian in the Persian literature cannot be ignored by any historian. So, as the early culture and the historical relation, the relation between India and Iran has been well found since time immemorial. Both nations have the greatest civilization on the planet. Civilization is nothing else but a combination of diverse custom, culture, knowledge system, art, architect. The two great ancient civilization came together in the subcontinent and produced a cultural synthesis, which has rarely been seen in other world. Uh, in other words, uh, Persian has influenced many of our vernacular like Kashmiri, Punjabi, Sindhi, Bangla, Marathi, Gujarati. I have had personally experience with the Kashmiri where I recognize many familiar sounding vocabs as well. Persian and India. Persian language was the court language for around 800, as I mentioned, and it includes a wealth of knowledge, hundreds of books on history, science, theology, leisure activities, and literature were written in Persian. Many classics from Sanskrit were translated into it, including the scriptures such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. So, shall we depend on foreign expert to come and decode all our archives, papers, and books and tell us about the Persian in India? William Dalrymple, the European famous historian, he says that in his book, The Last Mughal, he says that he came upon this vast source of paper in the National Archives in Delhi related to 1857, which has hitherto not even been studied in any world. Professor Sayyid Amir Hassan Abidi, he was the first Persian professor in Delhi University, and he says that with the coming of the Muslims to the subcontinent, Persian, an Aryan tongue and sister language of Sanskrit, came to India, which is the confluence of diverse faith, languages, and cultures, and which has a tradition of adopting and blending, and then producing a composite cultural unity in diversity. He further said that since both Persian and Sanskrit belong to the same family, a proper scientific study of Persian is incomplete without studying Sanskrit. Yet, no university offers these two languages together. Persian was not just a language, it signifies a way of life, and it gave birth to a composite culture which we today call the Ganga Jamna Tehzeeb. We can't just swish it away. Uh, so far as the contributions of both Muslims and the Hindus for Persian, in fact, the contribution of both these religion to the development and upbringing of Persian literature resulted in a unique style known as Sabke Hindi, means the style of India. This style finds recognitions in Iran as well. Most of the Persian grammars and lexicon were written in India, and today the Iranian uh, are editing and reprinting them. For example, the Munshi Chandraban Brahman, a close associate to the Dara Shuku, was not only a prominent poet but also a prose writer and held the offer of a chief secretary in the epistolary department. Dara Shuku himself contributed a lot to the Indo-Persian literature. For example, he translated the Upanishad as in Persian it is translated as a Sera Akbari. This taken by Benier to France, where it reached Hippolyte de Peron, who translated it into French and Latin. The Latin version reached the German philosopher uh, known as Sycophanier, who was greatly influenced by it and called the Persian Upanishad the solace of this life. In addition, there are so many other contributions to Persian rather than books which written by Hindu scholars. For example, Raj Ram Mohan Rai brought the first newspaper in Persian named as Miratul Akbar. He also wrote Tuhfatul Muwahhidin in Persian, which is about the religion. The first Persian dictionary in India is called as Miratu Istitla by Rai Anand Mukhlis, Zij Muhammad Shahi by Raj Jai Singh, as astronomy and astrology are some of the deserve special mention. These vast sources of our country and our heritage is scattered throughout the country in different museums, archives, and private collection. We do ourselves a disservice by ignoring and neglecting them. Persian and the Sufism. Sufism in India. Another famous influence of the Indo-Persian is Sufism, which the Indian Nirvana become the Sufi Fana. Although Sufism didn't take birth in subcontinent, but it became an important center for its growth and development. But to millions of the people even today, the calm of most of the Sufis are in Persian, and are even today sung at several dargahs and khanqahs. There is a wealth of Sufis literature, which is a commentary on the times it was written in available to us, but alas, it is in Persian. Nobody understood and translate it. It is truly said Sufism is the soul of Persian poetry, and our mystical poets have used it as a means of propagating humanism. Uh, Persian and the British, after the Battle of Palisades in 23rd June 1757, the British came in to rule Bengal and establish a civil and military administration. It is the fact that in order to establish a permanent control over the Indians, the British required the Persian language to communicate with them in different fields, especially in administrative and political purpose. The British officers and high-rank armies learned Persian, produced text in it, and felt that it should be taught to the Indian elite as well. The essence of this policy was this usage of Persian to get understand the former poser structure and to continue with established practice, so as to give Indian a little ground for reward as possible. Apart from the policies made by the British side, Persian is always a unique and elite language for Britishers. Some of the famous British personalities, such as Colonial Sleeman, who visited Delhi in 1836, appreciated Persian poetry, especially the work of Sheikh Saadi, Amir Khusro, and considered him as Persian spring of moral instructions. Charles Metcalfe, one of the builders of the empire, read Persian poetry for pleasure. Similarly, there were so many other Britishers who had opposed and even privately lamented the torment of Persian were Orientalists. So my founding is the downfall of the Persian from its prestigious and powerful status during the British Raj is in an example of how closely connected this language and attitude towards them can be with political power. When the Mughals and the British rule used Persian in the domains of powers, the language was necessary for instrumental reasons and as a passport to elite discourse and interaction. This ensured the culture ascendancy of the Mughals and the Muslims elite in India when the state with British replaced Persian with English and the approval vernacular languages of India. The symbol of elite culture become English. However, the language of Muslim identity as opposed become Urdu. Another reason was just after 1837, when Persian was removed from the domain of the government and administration, it began rapidly to lose its prestige as a dominant language in India. Hence, by the beginning of the 20th century, Persian was no longer in demand as a language of administration as well. The British and modernizing Indian now felt that it could be eliminated from the syllabus, and its place was taken by English and Urdu and Hindi. There is such an excess of riches in terms of biographies and texts in Persian, which have not been documented and are lying in different archives and libraries and cared for on verge of extinction. We cannot let this language die out in India, keeping in mind the Persian literature that we have. We need librarians, experts who can catalog and take out required Persian manuscripts for researchers of the different subjects written in Persian. And in short, we can say that any language will only flourish if it leads to economic rewards as an employment generator, and we must create those avenue of opportunities as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Okay, may I request another participant, second participant, to present his paper. After their paper presentation, I will give my final remark.
Now I request Mandavi Chaudhary to present a paper.
I hope my screen is visible
Yes, it is.
and I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure being here today. I'm Mandvi, a PhD research scholar at the Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies, Delhi University. And the title of my paper is Tell It Through Jewelry, Locating Folk Jewelry in Maithili Oral Traditions. So, how exactly can we define oral traditions? Oral traditions can be described as a process of transmission of folk knowledge that is carried from one generation to the other. Oral traditions have ensured cultural continuity in communities through the sharing of stories, songs, history, personal experiences, and social commentary. A common example of oral traditions is the bedtime stories that parents narrate to their children, which are further narrated by them to their children, and so on. All cultures have their unique oral traditions, with Mithila being no exception. So, oral traditions revolving around jewelry in the region of Mithila, parts of Bihar and Nepal, can be classified into five parts: folk songs, proverbs, sayings, riddles, and lullabies. I'll begin with folk songs. Nak kere nathiya tohar gol molcho. This is a popular Maithili folk song. The husband sings to his blushing wife and says that her nose ring, nathiya, is round. Though it looks like gold, it is made of an artificial material. In the song, the husband is an active speaker, while the wife remains a passive listener without a voice throughout. The husband describes the beauty of his wife and dedicates the song to her nathiya, nose ring, which fascinates him. Laura Mulvey believes that in a world of sexual imbalance exists a split between active male and passive female. When a woman displays her body adorned with jewelry to a man, the strong visual leaves an erotic impact on him. Coming to proverbs, people in Mithila come up with proverbs that explain or suit a particular situation the best. They have not basically learned them, but these proverbs have inherently become a part of their folk life. The mention of jewelry in proverbs carries several meanings depending upon the context. A few of the commonly used proverbs can be identified as the follows: Asarfi par loot, koila par chap. One spends lavishly on expensive jewelry such as a sarfi, a necklace made of coins, but cannot meet basic needs. Jatte ke bahu nahi tatte ke larthi. The money spent on the larthis, large bangles, is much more than that being spent on the wife. So these proverbs basically critique human vices like greed, extravagance, and also poke fun of people who possess these vices. Through these popular proverbs that are used on an everyday basis to comment on relatable situations, jewelry can be associated with desires. Desires, as we know, can be both good and bad, but excess of anything, as believed, can lead to fatal consequences. Thus, proverbs work as moral lessons, imparting the right learning, accompanied with warnings meant for the betterment of the folk. Just like the proverbs, sayings on jewelry attempt to expose the vices of people. Let's take this one as an example. Bhair haat larti, dhan ke kutat, saya pain khoka, chul ke fukat. So the woman here has too many lartis in her hands and she wonders and complains then how will she grind the grains? She accuses her husband of being a careless betel leaf addict who can barely do a thing like cooking. Lurties, lap bangles, can here be visualized as a form of burden of responsibilities. So the woman is overburdened with lurties, which stand for a heap of responsibilities. It is a direct attack on patriarchy that imposes responsibilities, as symbolized by lurties, a compulsory hand ornament worn by married women while the husband whiles away his time. There is another saying that is quoted very often in Mithila, and it goes like this: Aprup bhojan parrup shringar. This means that you can choose your food, but not what you wear and how you adorn your body. So now moving ahead to riddles. In this particular riddle, corn is imagined as a woman's hand filled with lathis till her arms. Kani take chori ke bhair bhair lathi, makai, which can be translated as a little girl is overloaded with lathis till her arms. Guess the answer. The answer is corn. The image of lathis filled till the arms can be interpreted as a fierce attack on the cultural norm that makes it mandatory for married women to wear lathis. There's another way of looking at it. And we can also say that this riddle glorifies the beauty of lathis that has been compared to corn, which is like a lathi, vibrant and beautiful. Lullabies. Now, lullabies are sung to send the child to sleep and make the use of rhyming patterns to grab the attention of the child. Jewelry being mentioned in lullabies suggests that children are introduced to folk life in the very initial stage of their lives. Jewelry is an integral part of life in Mithila, and it cannot be separated from oral traditions. Thus, constant references of folk jewelry are made in lullabies. Maina ge, maini ge, kahar gona khetoge, hat ne taki. 16 से सुपारी है तो ऐप नहीं तकी, घोड़ा चढ़कर दूल्हा है तो ऐप नहीं तकी, कान में कान फूल दे तो देत नहीं तकी. So basically, the speaker here talks to two girls and he initiates a conversation. And the names of the girls are Mena and Meni, based on the Mena word. The conversation gets interesting as the girls keep responding to the speaker by putting forward questions. So it begins with the speaker saying, "Oh dear Mena and Meni, you shall go to your in-laws' place very soon." And the girls ask, "Why not?" The speaker says, 1,600 nuts will be brought. And the girls respond by saying, "Shouldn't they be?" Speaker says, "Your groom shall come on the horse." And the girls again put forward a question, "Shouldn't he?" And then lastly, the speaker says, "He shall get your earrings." And the girls ask, "Why shouldn't he get them?" So now moving forward to the conclusion, I would like to state that culture and jewelry cannot be imagined without one another, which is to say that jewelry is an inseparable part of any culture. And the changes that take place in culture also get reflected in the manner in which jewelry is experienced or jewelry is worn. So that is to say that various meanings of folk life are conveyed and communicated through folk jewelry, and they're mentioned in distinct forms of traditions or of oral traditions. The oral traditions make mention of jewelry to highlight a pertinent issue or to comment on a context or a situation. The folk and their mediums of expression cannot be seen in isolation without the inclusion of jewelry. So thus, jewelry can be perceived as a binding force that brings the folk, the people, closer to folk life, maintaining its position as a permanent presence. Lastly, I would like to end by saying that every piece of jewelry tells a story, but are we willing to lend it our ears? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation. May I request another participants to present his or her paper?
Now I request Balaji to present his paper.
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning. Good morning to one another.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah. Am I audible, Professor?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes, you are audible. Kindly share your screen.
Yeah. Just a moment. Actually, falls on holiday. I couldn't find enough network in my area. I just roaming here and there for the best network, doctor. Just a moment. I won't waste your time. Doctor, due to some technical issues, I couldn't able to share my screen. Uh, I ask apologies for this technical issues. Let me present my paper. Could you able to hear my voice? Whether my voice is audible to you, Professor?
Yes, yes. But
Yes.
it's better to share your screen.
Yeah,
from
keep on trying for that only. Actually, is keep on buffering, doctor. That's what share.
open your file. Your screen is visible to us.
Yes, yes, yes. For each and every command, it's keep on buffering due to some technical issues and network problems. That's I'm struggling. I'm very sorry for that. Again, share. Professor, is my screen is visible?
Yes, yes. Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, still it's keep on buffering. Sorry
Go,
for
go
inconvenience.
on
Good morning.
next slide, no, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning to one and all. I am Balaji, Research Scholar, Department of English, VH Vellore. I am very glad to present my research paper titled An Exploration of Cultural and Psychological Emancipation of an Immigrant Woman in Bharati Mukherjee's novel Jasmine. Bharati Mukherjee, one of the most renowned writers of the Indian diaspora, who frequently expresses many issues faced by Indian immigrants, particularly women. Some of the predominant themes of Bharati Mukherjee include Indian diaspora, diasporic hybridity, immigrant women's conflict, immigrant identity crisis, particularly the immigrant struggle to fit in with local ethos, cultures, and people of both the country of their immigration and their native homeland. Uh, Doctor, I'm unable to move my slide. Sorry. Objective of this paper is to examine how the protagonist Jasmine is subjected to the cultural and psychological transformation in order to establish her own identity in a foreign land, namely the United States. Through the life story of Jasmine, the author recalls the fact that lives of the immigrants are undoubtedly a series of reincarnations given the drastic exposure to social and geographical relocations. The author makes the crucial point that one must assimilate and adapt to the cultural ethos most of the majority. The main theme or the plot of the novel, the plot of the Jasmine is a heart-wrenching account of what happens in the life of Jyoti, who assumes dozens of names and false identities in a sure pursuit of fulfilling a dead husband's dream of settling in America. Her American dream becomes only a bubble that bursts in no time as misfortune after misfortune strikes her heart time in and time again, right after a departure from her homeland, Punjab, to her present state of being a desolated, destitute in Iowa. Her frantic search from pillar to post for a safe haven, otherwise a home, ironically proves to be a myth in the novel. Overall, in the novel, Mukherjee argues in Beyond Multiculturalism, the immigration is a process of gain as opposed to those who experiences a loss while transitioning to a new culture. It is advantageous to discard the collective identity in order to search or reach one's individual identity, an identity that is constantly changing and developing. Uh, just as Mukherjee's protagonist in Jasmine goes through identity reconstructions. Without a doubt, this novel honors Bharati Mukherjee's enthusiasm for immigrants. In this novel, Jasmine serves as both a representative of the ideal maximalist immigrant lady and a catalyst for change, inspiring other immigrants to embrace their maximalist selves. Bharati Mukherjee admits in her interviews that she values Indian immigrant ladies more than their male counterparts. She explains that while males want to succeed financially and go back to India, women go through a greater psychological transformation. The Indian woman going through this psychological change is exemplified by Jasmine through the roles and names she takes on. She reincarnates several times. Jasmine accepts what she eventually understands to be American and society, and according to Mukherjee, this is a significant achievement for an Indian immigrant woman. The reincarnations of Jasmine as Jodi, Jasmine, Jessie, Jazz, and Jane symbolize different stages in her constantly evolving process of self-identification and the culture influences she makes at each stage. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, professor. Whether I
Yes,
am inside the meeting?
yes.
Yeah.
Now I
Uh,
request
Actually,
Brijesh.
actually, your voice also getting a break while I was speaking, doctor. I'm very, very sorry.
it's okay. Go
It's
ahead.
okay.
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
Yes. Next, I request Brijesh Kumar Sahu to present his paper.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir, you are.
I think presentation is visible to now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. respected chairperson, respected coordinator, and my dear fellow participants, and all the delegates. I, Brajesh Kumar Sahu, PhD scholar from the Department of English, Sanchi University of Buddhist Indic Studies, Sanchi. The Sanchi is the first international university having focuses on Buddhist Indic studies. With the due permission of Chairman Sirs, along with my co-author, who is awarded by the PM, respected Sir Dr. Naveen Mehta Sir, Head of the Department of English, Sanchi University, presenting my paper on human values in Bhagavad Gita and a discourse. Indian culture is deeply rooted in ethical and moral values. It is the source of wisdom and has the answer to all problems faced by humanity in modern times. Among the prominent scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita is considered the most influential, universally accepted philosophical text, which can act as a guide, a mentor, and moreover, a perfect psychologist who can handle the new generation issue of coping with stressful situation in relation with the absence of human values. Since moral and values remain static of all humans, it can be indeed termed as a book of beyond culture and tradition. The Bhagavad Gita contains words of wisdom, practically teaching that contains answer to the individual's condition today. It is the message addressed to all humans to help them overcome the thorny problem of overcoming the present and moving forward together. This scripture is not a mere old scripture, nor is it a book of religious teachings, nor is it a Hindu scripture. It transcends religious and racial boundaries and indeed helps people to face, seek, solve the perpetual problems of life and death, pain, suffering, fear, attachment of love. The speaker of Bhagavad Gita is Lord Sri Krishna. He mentioned on every chapters to the Bhagavad Gita as the supreme being of God. It's also, we can say, Bhagwan. Of course, the word Bhagwan sometimes refers to any mighty person or any mighty demigod, or certainly here Bhagwan refers to the Lord Krishna as a great personality. The subject of Gita involves an understanding of fundamental truths. Science of God is explained, then the constitutional position of living entities, the jeeves, there are Ishvara, which means controller, and there are jeeves, controlled living entities. So in this research paper, we have covered some review of literatures. Mr. Bhattacharya, who analyzed the karma, which is like karma levadi karaste mapaleshu gadachana. It is a famous quote of by the Gita. Mr. Karamkar discussed the Purushartha, denotes cardinal values of human societies. Or Mr. Neve, this all highlighted the concept of human values are often described as a universal. This study describes human values and what they mean. So this research is descriptive in nature. Instead of taking information from every unit in the universe, only representative fraction is studied and conclusions are drawn based on this entire universe of entire population. This article is descriptive, presented from philosophical point of view. A secondary study was carried out to understand the impact of moral values in verses and how it helps develop human values. The article is based on the literature review and secondary information collected from the journals, newspapers. The objective of this article is to study the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, an Indian text that perceives human values in the verses and identifies the elements necessary for the development of human values. Bhagavad Gita, when spiritually is often on a universal scale, the pragmatism reigns supreme most individual in a scenario. As of now, people do not remember that Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. and so it happens to be rebellious statement for the eternity. The divine, the Bhagavad Gita, literally pulsate with our divinely endowed human life and energy. It is extremely alive for all those who are interested in the divine Gita for their inspiration and support. There are individuals who swear by experience that they are faced by a particular problem in their personal lives. Open the gig to read it. For a better future, human values, for example, respect, acceptance, and consideration, appreciate, listen, open, cherish, sympathize, and love. Human values are a tool for managing human relationship and a tool for positioning yourself when stress is high. In the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 13, there are some verses we have taken to understand what the human values important are, the virtues, the habits, the behaviors of man, the attitudes that purify one's life and illuminate it with light knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So that is one verses. I'll read it out over here. Amanitvam mansaha shantirajvam acharyopasanam shausham stharyam atma banigrah. There are 8 to 12 verses I have mentioned over here, which are the greatest wealth of knowledge through which a human being can achieve the perfection of life has been described. This detailed explanation of Sri Krishna leads to the understanding that promotes self-realizations and liberation from ignorance. Like humility, when we become proud of the attributes of our personal sphere, such as beauty, wisdom, talent, strength, etc., we forget that God has given us these attributes. Therefore, pride has the effect of alienating our conscience from God. It is the great obstacle on the path of self-realization. The liberation from hypocrisy, the hypocrite develops a fake extrovert personality, a person who has flaws on the side but creates a skillful facade on the outside. A culture of knowledge demands respect of all sentient beings. This requires the practice of non-violence. Hence, the scripture says, if you don't like a certain behavior of others, don't behave that way towards them. If you talk about the forgiveness, it is the absence of malice towards those who have harmed someone. In fact, harboring bad things will harm you more than anything else. By practicing forgiveness, a discriminating person releases the negativity in the mind and purify it. If you, there's a simplicity is the thought, word, and deed. Writers through includes absence and decayed envy, dishonesty. Straightforwardness in speech includes absence of radical censorship, gossip, decorations. Uprightness is conduct, and so on. Knowing God is not a goal that can be achieved in one day. Stability is presence on the path until the goal is achieved. The scripture declare that, like the word in Sanskrit, charayavati, 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 to keep moving forward. Those who don't give up will have the last spring. If you talk about the autonomy, it is obstacle for the mind and sense to pursue worldly pleasure that define the mind and intellect. It is we can also have a non-attachment. It means separation from the world. We have only one mind, and we want to engage in the pursuit of spiritual goals. We take the tilt of a desert place. Unlike worldly people, religious people are not motivated by the need of companionship to overcome feelings and loneliness. They naturally enjoy solitude, which allows them to engage their spirit in the communication with God. Unceasing spiritual knowledge. Knowing something theoretically not enough. We may know that anger is a bad thing, but we can still give it away again and again. We must learn to apply spiritual knowledge in our lives. This does not happen by hearing profound truths just once. So throughout the Gita, Sri Krishna Yogeshwara are represented as being an Atman in all of us. Atman, or this important inner core, is where all the movies about the event of each life take place. Each of us invoke the Lord within us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna represent an ordinary human being, an ordinary being with their weakness, temptation, and fears. When he bowed his head to dissuade him, he was confused and completely out of his mind, not knowing what to do. At the end of his speech, he stood up, recovering from the delirium, ready bowing to this duty by combining the two, Krishna and Yogeshwara. By invoking the God within with this divine guidance, he is ready to face obstacle and fight in the battle of life. And then nothing can stop him from achieving anything and everything he wants. Finally, the essence of the three gunas and the realization that every thought, word, and deed is sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. A description of Purushottama, yoga, and finally, promise in the last chapter, the Bhagavad Gita provides incredible wisdom that helps to solve the basic human problems. It provides us with a way to live our lives productively. Nowadays, mankind is facing many challenges such as violations, corruption, depressions, etc. These challenges can be met by gaining wisdom through the Gita. So it is completed from my side. Thank you so much.
On behalf of my co-author, I also extend my sincere thanks to the organizing committee for giving us an opportunity to present our paper. I congratulate the organizing committee for the grand success, and it's really wonderful that we have very good interactions for the last day also and today also. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Yes, sir. Next, I request Hadi Mohammed to present his paper. I request Hadi Jasim Mohammada.
Good morning,
to-
everyone.
Yes, good morning.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm glad and honored to participate in my paper presentation here in this international conference. Actually, I've collaborated with Dr. Nabras from Al-Iraqi University and Dr. Jagdish Joshi from Gujarat University to present my paper under the title A Rhetorical Question in Obama's Speeches. It's a pragmatic study. So let me start. I've tried as much as I can to summarize my paper presentation. So is it movable? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a second. So can you see my slides?
Yes, ma'am, you can use the full screen.
Yeah, okay. Introduction. Speaking is the most powerful tool for communicating. Consequently, for leaders, rhetorical question is an essential tool for influencing and controlling people, because society is usually looking for leaders or influencers who have speech skills. The study addresses how President Barack Obama, the former president of the United States of America, used rhetorical questions in his various speeches. The study aims at display the pragmatic function of rhetorical questions. In order to reach this aim, it is hypothesized that rhetorical questions do not derive an answer like ordinary questions, but rather they state something. In other words, there is another meaning behind its literal meaning, its elocutionary force. Rhetorical questions are indirect speech act, and largely in political speeches, they are employed to persuade the audience. In the present study, certain procedures have been followed. Firstly, a survey of rhetorical question, its form and function. Secondly, Obama and American political speeches have been selected that contain rhetorical questions, and they analyze on the basis of the adopted theory. Third, the results of the analysis are provided. The aims of the research objective include a description of the research destination that will be reached as a result of the specific research. The thesis arranged have the following goals: to learn about the rhetorical question and its use, and to learn about rhetorical techniques that Obama frequently employs in his speeches in order to captivate audience. Definition of rhetorical questions. What's the rhetorical question? Several scholars have previously defined a rhetorical question as one that does not expect an answer. It is also interpreted as a question asked without expecting an answer, but for the sake of persuasion rather than a genuine request for information, with the speaker implying that the answer is too obvious to require a response or simply to make a point. Rhetorical question is a figure of speech in the form of a question posed for the purpose of persuasion with no expectation of a response. For example, when I say, "How can I ever thank you, Lord?" For example, rhetorical question promote the audience to consider what the implied answer to the question must be. The purpose of this figure of speech is not to elicit a response, but to implicitly assert to deny a point. Rhetorical question functions. The pseudo question is directed at others and has a clear answer. And B, the stimulates question is directed to others and has a clear answer. And third function is we have the aporia is addressed to oneself and reveals the speaker's thought processes without providing an obvious solution. For example, including doubts, uncertainty, disbelief, and etc. Functions of rhetorical question. According to Aboy, rhetorical questions appear in both written and spoken language, implying that they serve different functions, which include rhetorical function, where they are primarily used to change emotion, expression, strong feelings of outrage, vehement indignation, shake readers or listeners out of complacency, stupor, and so on. And we have also stylistic function. It can be used to add variety to one's writing style while also breaking away from the traditional writing format or style. We have also the persuasive functions. Here, the rhetorical question indirectly aids the formation or even change of one opinion, as well as in stimulating arguments by presenting issues to the audience, sometimes directly. The primary advantage of using this device is language use in communication, is that it creates a channel for personal interaction between the writer or the speaker and the listener or reader that is not present in conventional straightforward sentences. And the last function is the grammatical function, is found in textual thematic focusing or referring prominence. Referential, prominence. Let's see rhetoric and pragmatics. The most obvious parallel between rhetoric and pragmatics is the emphasis on the use and function of language, as well as the role of language in various activities. Furthermore, both disciplines attempt to account for non-explicit or non-verbal information in discourse, such as implicatures and gestures. Let's see the data analysis. Data from this study was collected from Obama speeches on various occasions, both as a candidate and as a president. All the selected speeches will be analyzed based on the adopted speeches by some selected of Obama political speeches that contain rhetorical questions of different types and functions. Let's see the first example. when Barack Obama's speech on the 21st century economy at George Mason University in 2009 is an example of effective use of rhetorical question. When he said to the audience, he said, "The first question each of us ask isn't what's good for me, but what's good for the country my children will inherit." That was the speech of Obama in 2009. He gave a rhetorical question without an answer. These rhetorical questions effectively combine the needs of everyone for a happy ending, from the president and every adult to each child and all young generations whose future depends on the action of adults, namely those to whom the preceding speeches is addressed. And another example, when he said also, or he mentioned, "And what the American people care about, I suspect are the same thing that the British people care about. And that is, are you putting people back to work? Are businesses growing again? Is the credit flowing again? And and that's the true concerning this summit. But when it comes to our Afghanistani policy, the questions is going to be: have we made ourselves safer? Have we reduced this risk and incidents of terrorism as one?" So that was the speech of Obama. It's rich of rhetorical questions. As one of the universal socio-linguistic methods of influencing the addressee, Barack Obama employs rhetorical questions to enhance the expressiveness of his speech. In this way, Obama asserts that it is absurd to believe that the spread of terrorism or weapons can be stopped without radical change. The speaker achieves a great effect by asking questions that do not require answer. The audience believes him as if he is saying absolute truth that can never be questioned. And these questions only serve to emphasize that Obama, using these three rhetorical questions, appeals to the patriotism of American citizen, rendering any other emotions totally inadequate. Another example is the president's remarks on Syria in his addresses to the nation on September 10th, 2013, when he said, "Why should we get involved at all in a place that's so complicated?" And whereas one person wrote to me, "Those who come after Assad may be enemies of human rights." This is another rhetorical question, can be interpreted as a criticism of Obama's. People blame him for getting involved in a conflict with Syria. Additionally, this question can also be seen as an instant of argumentative motivating speech act. It seeks answer, but for special types, such answers are in fact justification or rejecting this blame. That is, the indirect speech act of blame will have an additional indirect speech act of giving justification or command. So, conclusion. Rhetorical questions are widely used in different languages, situation, and by different types of languages, of language users due to their persuasive and communicative effectiveness. They are commonly understood to be questions that are not meant to be answered, but rather to convey a message that would be less memorable and persuasive if stated directly. This study aims to learn more about the rhetorical questions used in Barack Obama's speeches in this article. The Obama discourse is distinguished by manipulation of various types of rhetorical questions. They have been used to highlight rhetorical reasoning in argumentation in order to prelocutionary persuade and influence the audience. According to the findings, a question that do not require an answer is a powerful tool that has a significant impact on the audience. For readers and young researchers to learn more about rhetorical questions and dig deeper into linguistic areas, as a result, people can be more confident when speaking or giving a speech in public. That's it. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone left, ma'am?
No, sir.
Okay. Now the session is open for Q&A. If any participant have any question to anyone, those who have presented their papers before. Ma'am, I have one question for Haider Jasmine. What is the pragmatic significance for Obama's speech?
Actually, the pragmatic significance in Obama's speech that in pragmatics we study direct and indirect speech, and we study the intentions behind the speaker. So it is the same thing that we talk in an indirect way, and we are not giving a questions for requesting an answer, but there is intentions behind our speakers, behind our speech. So this is the pragmatic importance in rhetorical questions.
But ma'am, don't you differentiate between semantic meaning and pragmatic meaning? Because pragmatic
Yes.
meaning, as I know, is
It's
the
the
meaning in the
intention.
context.
Yeah,
Meaning in
exactly.
the context.
The
Okay.
intentions of the speaker.
Whatever Barack Obama had said before, it must be related to that context only. And every sentence has its own meaning, and it is related to context as well. So it has a cultural context.
Yes.
Then we have the different kind of context, we can say physical context and
Yes.
all kind of context.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
suppose, for example, if I uttered a word, three,
Mm.
4 words, I am here now. So
Yes.
I am here now has this time have a different context. Like, so that I am
Exactly.
ready for my final concluding remark. It might be there. If the organizer had said that I am here now, so or the coordinator had said this, uttered these words, so might be he or she is ready for coordinating the sessions. So these all 4 words have different contexts. So
Exactly.
from that point of view, I am asking a question to you.
Mhm.
Do you find any cultural differentiate between rhetorical kind of a questions who
Mhm.
has raised by Barack Obama, okay,
Mm.
during his speeches?
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
any
Mm.
differentiate, cultural differentiate?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, there is a cultural differentiate, obviously, because we will understand the question or his speech according to our culture. Maybe other countries, they will, for example, understand it that we are, Obama's speech was, for example, he was giving a criticism about Syria country and terrorism. And maybe the American people, they will understand it, understand this point according to their cultures, that he is trying to save them from the war. But maybe the Syrian people, they will try to understand it in different way, because they were in difficult situations, or they will understand it that there will be some war or something bad will happen to them. So of course it depends on the environment and the context. And so from culture to culture, or from country to country, this will understand it differently. So there is cultural differences, obviously.
Yes, yes. But do you find any while studying? I think you are doing your research on this topic, right?
Yeah.
In Gujarat University with
In
Professor
Gujarat.
Jagdish Joshi, sir.
Yes, with he's
Okay,
my guide. Yeah.
okay. He is a very good friend of mine. Anyway, but you need to, while going through your thesis, there is only one suggestion from my side, that
Okay, so
please just look at into about cultural differences while analyzing any kind of a speech.
yeah, okay,
Because
sir.
okay, sir. Okay,
Yeah.
ma'am. And just
Thank you,
show
sir.
it to your guide as well before
Thank you, sir.
going for any concluding remark.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Good morning, one and all. Respected coordinator, honorable, and then Desi Verma ma'am, Shaileja Vasudeva ma'am, and dear participants. It's an honor and proud privilege to chair such outstanding presentations. First paper presenter was Dr. Syed Javed, assistant professor in Persian study from Jammu and Kashmir, has meticulously presented his views on Persian and the British Raj in India. He has clearly explained a relationship between Persian and Sufism, Persian and British, and the immense contribution of Persian,
سألني وضل يحكي وياي ليش
Persian
ما
with
تحكي
culture
وياهم؟
and historical
خلاص
point
بدك
of view.
جديد.
I think
ها؟
Haider
حبيبي.
Jasmi, kindly mute your mic. Okay. So the next paper presenter was, I think, Madhavi Chaudhary ma'am, PhD research scholar from Delhi University, has elaborately and aptly addressed about jewelry, locating folk jewelry in oral tradition, I think Maithili oral tradition. Madhavi Chaudhary ma'am has clearly analyzed folk songs, proverbs, oral traditions, then riddles, uh, lullabies with various examples, and come out with a very interesting findings, and that culture and jewelry are inseparable part, right? And just there is one request she has, that just lend our ears, so that but it was a very interesting topic. uh, Next paper presenter was, I think, in collaboration with Dr. Yam Themonzi and D. Balaji, right? A research scholar from VIT Vellore. He has orally presented about India and exploration of a cultural and psychological emancipation of immigrant women, particularly with reference to Bharti Mukherjee's novel Jasmine. He has clearly elaborated about how women were immigrant, what are the psychological and cultural emancipation was there during Bharti Mukherjee's novel Jasmine. Next paper presenter was, I think, Brijesh Shahu, in collaboration with Professor Dr. Naveen Mehta sir from Sanchi University of Buddhist Studies. He has clearly explained about human values in Bhagavad Gita, and we have read about Bhagavad Gita and what are human values. It is He has also very clearly explained about the significance of Bhagavad Gita from humanitarian point of view. The last paper presenter was Haider Jasmine, and in collaboration with Iran University and Gujarat University, she has clearly explained about a rhetorical question in Obama's speeches from pragmatical point of view. So uh, she has particularly focused about all the address functions of rhetorical questions and so on, with various examples. All in all, just I would like to say that such kind of online and offline kind of webinars uh, are very convenient, very offer flexibility, bring educations right from our home, offer more individual attentions, so give us a real life experience. Then it's a very much very important to connect you to globally, right? So by sitting at our respective home. So actually it reminds me George Curious statement that technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of a great teacher can be transformational. So we can transform the world with our thoughts and with the help of such kind of a technology that we are learning from each other. Overall, all the paper presenters were analytical, insightful, resourceful, informative, and innovative in their respective topics. We were all pleased and in fact learned a lot from their fruitful address, okay, and thought-provoking address, I must say. It was very relevant to the theme of the webinar, and it's honor and proud privilege uh, to to hold such kind of a session and to listen to such a scholarly people. Once again, I need to thank and congratulate the organizer and organizing committee members, Shailaja Vasudev ma'am and their team, and her team actually, and Desi Verma ma'am for inviting me to chair such insightful session. Thank you one and all.